The man in the dark baseball cap moved with the kind of quiet confidence that suggested he had rehearsed every step long before he reached the parking lot. Snowmelt dripped from the awnings of the small Anchorage coffee kiosk, and the last hints of winter light faded behind him. It was February 1st, 2012, and the temperature had dropped far enough that most customers hurried in and out, never noticing the figure pacing in slow circles near the edge of the lot. Israel Keyes waited, glancing occasionally at his watch, studying the windows with calm precision. To anyone passing by, he looked like a man killing time. But he wasn't. He was waiting for the moment when the young barista inside would be alone. When 19-year-old Samantha Koenig stepped out to hand him his drink, he pulled a gun and forced her back inside. The surveillance camera caught only fragments, her raised hands, his silhouette, the moment he jumped the counter. He moved with practiced efficiency, guiding her out the back of the kiosk and across the lot toward the truck he had parked in the shadows. Within minutes, the two of them were gone, leaving nothing behind but an unlocked kiosk and a grainy video clip that would be replayed across Anchorage for months. Keyes drove her to his home, where he had already prepared a shed behind the house. His girlfriend and young daughter slept inside, unaware of what was happening just yards away. Investigators would later learn that Keyes had spent years refining this method, striking at night, creating just enough confusion to delay discovery, and choosing victims with no predictable pattern. Samantha's disappearance triggered an immediate search, but Keyes stayed calm, going about his normal routines while keeping her captive until he killed her, then left the state on a previously booked trip. The case grew stranger in the days that followed. Keyes returned home, staged a ransom note using Samantha's phone, and made it appear she was still alive. He withdrew money from her debit card across multiple states, drawing investigators southward as he drove into Texas. The withdrawals were deliberate, just enough to trigger attention, never enough to reveal his exact path. This pattern of control, manipulation, and mobility would become a hallmark of his crimes. On March 13, 2012, a Texas state trooper pulled over a white rental car near the town of Cottondale for a minor traffic violation. Inside the vehicle were Samantha's ATM card, her phone, and a mask resembling the one seen in Anchorage. Keyes was arrested calmly, almost politely, as if the moment had been expected. It didn't take long for investigators to realize they had apprehended someone far more dangerous than a kidnapper. When the FBI began questioning him, Keyes spoke with an unsettling level of detachment. He described his crimes the way someone might recount a home renovation project: steps, tools, supplies, cleanup. He admitted to Samantha's murder, then hinted at others, but he refused to name victims, places, or dates without leverage. He wanted certain conditions met. He wanted an execution timeline. He wanted control. Over the next months, agents learned that the man they were interrogating was a serial killer, unlike most they had encountered. Keyes had spent more than a decade traveling across the United States, committing murders in different states with no connection between him and his victims. He planted kill kits containing weapons, cash, and supplies in remote areas, sometimes burying them years before he returned to use them. He chose victims based on opportunity, not preference. He didn't stalk specific individuals. He stalked environments, campgrounds, remote homes, lonely roads. He avoided digital footprints. He avoided trophies. He avoided anything that would allow a predictable pattern to emerge. In one confession, he described flying to Chicago, renting a car, and driving more than 1,000 miles to Vermont, where he abducted Bill and Lorraine Currier in 2011. He broke into their home at random, chose them simply because their house had no alarm system, and murdered them after taking them to an abandoned farmhouse. He said the bodies would never be found, and they never have been. The more he talked, the more investigators understood that they were dealing with a man who had engineered his life to stay hidden. He changed rental cars mid-trip. He turned off his phone for entire states at a time. He chose banks without cameras. He studied how law enforcement responded to disappearances. He moved methodically, leaving behind almost no trace. His crimes stretched from Washington to Texas, from New York to the Southwest, and possibly into Canada. He hinted at a victim in Washington state years earlier, at an unidentified body submerged in a lake, at a teenage girl he claimed to have killed in the late 1990s. For every confession he offered, he held back another. Federal agents tried to map his movements, cross-checking missing person cases with rental records, airline tickets, and vague geographical clues he provided. He enjoyed the process, engaging in verbal games that forced investigators to guess details he already knew. He revealed enough to show his reach, but concealed enough to maintain power over the investigation. At various times, he smiled, joked, or shifted into flat, emotionless recitations. He didn't describe rage or compulsion. He described strategy. Outside the interrogation room, families across the country began to wonder whether their missing relatives were among Keyes's victims. The FBI publicly identified him as a serial killer, releasing images of his travels and asking for leads. Tips poured in, but Keyes refused to provide closure. He insisted he had committed at least 11 murders. Investigators believed the real number could be higher. In December 2012, while awaiting trial in Anchorage, Keyes requested writing materials. Guards assumed he intended to draft another motion or letter. Instead, he used a razor hidden in his cell to cut his wrists and strangle himself with bedding, ending his life before he could face trial or reveal the full scope of his crimes. He left behind cryptic writings with no actionable details, poetic fragments, metaphors, and references that helped no one. With his death, dozens of potential victims' names remained unanswered, and several families lost their only chance at knowing what had happened to their loved ones. Investigators continued to track his past movements, matching them with unresolved disappearances, but many of the leads grew cold. Keyes had built his crimes on distance and time. By the time anyone looked, entire trails had gone dark. Today, his case remains one of the most disturbing examples of a serial killer operating across the country without attracting suspicion. He blended into airports, rental counters, hardware stores, and quiet neighborhoods. He kept his family unaware of his crimes, and he used anonymity, carefully cultivated over years, to erase the people he chose at random. Israel Keyes left almost nothing behind except questions, and for many families, those questions have no answers. Thank you for listening to Homicide Files. Subscribe for more true crime stories.